Hi, Michaela. It's Penelope, and we're going to be sharing today on the upcoming eclipse. So thanks for doing this with me. How are you?
Okay. Let's turn my volume up. There you go.
Yeah, that would be great. So,
Okay.
right. So we've got the full moon and also the Sagittarius eclipse coming up, and the full moon lunar eclipse is Sagittarius at 5 degrees. It's happening on May the 26th, and I hope the times are right here, but from what I got, we've got United Kingdom, which I'm in, which is 12:13 a.m. And then we've got California 4:13 and New York 7:13 a.m. And I thought this was a good picture because it sort of brought the eclipse into it for me. What do you think of that, Michaela?
Yeah, it's really lovely.
Yeah, it's a nice picture. And then we've got here the lunar eclipse. So I'm not that educated on eclipses, but you are. So although this is the lunar eclipse chart, do you want to I know that we've got the full moon and that's happening. Is this the actual time of the eclipse here, or the full moon?
That's putting on the moon on the 1st because it's the lunar eclipse.
Okay.
So it's putting the moon in the 1st house because the moon does dominate the chart. So, but it's still set at, as you can see on the top, it's set at the UK GMT time.
Okay.
But that's irrelevant to the chart really, because that's the placement of everything anyway. So, except for the ascendant, that would be different.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is as well, I'm just going to go forward to aspects because we can see that a full moon is always, the moon is opposite the sun. But with a new moon, when we have the next eclipse, it will be a new moon, which will be around the 10th of June. We're not going into that today, though. And then what we have is that here we have the aspects to it. So does a full moon, is every eclipse on a full moon? Can you educate me a bit? Is every eclipse on, or is it to do with the nodes?
Well, it's to do with the nodes, yeah, when they conjunct the ecliptic plane. But it's either a full moon, which is a lunar eclipse, or it's a new moon, which is a solar eclipse.
Okay.
And they can be varying. I mean, this is a total eclipse, by the way, I think. Yeah, this is.
It is. The lunar eclipse is total.
Yeah.
And the solar, I don't know if it is. I didn't look whether that's total or not.
I haven't looked yet. But it doesn't make much difference. I found it doesn't make much differences to the astrology. It's still the same. Symbolically, it's the same.
Yes.
So yeah.
So for me, it's happening in my 7th house and 1st house, 7th axis, which is to do with myself and to do with others. With the Sagittarius, when we've got these up here, these aspects. Is there anything you can pick up there? I mean, we know the sun is opposition the moon, but we've got square Jupiter, trine Saturn, which we do like trines, but they, then basically it is the whole chart. Squares can help us, whilst it's tension, they actually can help us move forward. So nothing is really bad or, in a chart as far as I can see. And there's so many aspects going on, and it's actually trining Pluto as well. I just noticed that. And it's if we look at what Sagittarius, if we pop forward, if anybody wants to look at this, you can go to astro-seek.com and you can pull up this chart and pull up your own birth chart as well. So whilst I'm looking at this picture here, we do have, I think it's the 5th of June, we have Mars that's going to be in opposition to Pluto, which really is fascinating to me. And I'm going to do a video on that in a few days, because the last time that Mars was conjunct Pluto was January or around that period in 2020, probably March 2020, because Mars takes 2 years to move around the chart.
Mars is a major triggering planet. So it has, every time it's squared or opposed or conjuncted Pluto, because Pluto is the main aspect that's been going on. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction kicked off this period, as we said before, in 2020 in January. And so Pluto squaring Eris, in fact, is the major note, the major transit. And then after that, you get the Saturn square Uranus. And so anytime Mars hits those planets, and we're going to feel something happen, as particularly with Pluto and Eris. So now we have got Mars moving into the T square with Eris and Pluto. So
and we can see that, then we can look at that when we go to solar fire shortly, and after we've looked at this eclipse. But I do know that with Jeff Wolf-Green, the Mars, he does say that the Mars Pluto individuals, and if we look at the collective, have the capacity for self-transformation or total self-destruction. And he also does point out that there can be an attitude that I will do whatever I want, or that, you know, and don't care about the consequences. So, you know, we can, whatever the soul is trying to achieve will be seen through the action of Mars, and that the soul, as Jeff Wolf-Green says in his book, that the Pluto is the ocean, and then Mars is the wave, which is basically our action. It's where we act, but we're not, there's no separation and there's no separation in being on Earth from anything. And that's the truth of that. Hey?
yeah, exactly. Great picture.
It is a great picture. A friend of mine did that. They're quite good at the photography. So yeah, what we've got,
it looks like a figure in that. There's a figure in the middle.
There is a figure. It does look almost like you know, a human type to me, actually, with a and almost like a shadow. So it could be that that's, you know, part of it. Does actually look like that. That's quite interesting. What we do have with the Sagittarius, the key words are intuition, honesty, pilgrimage. It's multicultural. It's also to do with ideals and ideas. It's a nomad. It's the sense of being homeless, the explorer. It's restlessness, and it can be zealous faith, the priest, the convert. It's about adaptability and beliefs. It's where we can be dogmatic. It's our philosophy, wisdom, meaning, expansion, trust, faith, and truth. So we can see how this is playing out. You know, that's falling in my first house. Where's it falling for you? Or the second house for me, actually. I think it's just tipping into the second house. I was wrong there. It's second to, but I'll have a re-look at my chart on that, because where's it falling for you, Michaela?
It's opposite my Mars, so my Mars is in the third, so it's in my 9th house.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so I'll double check my placements.
The chart of the eclipse is very much about beliefs and the belief systems, and interestingly, the planetary nodes of Uranus are at, I think it's 10 degrees Sag, so that means the south node is on the planetary node of Uranus. I mean, that's used in EA astrology.
Well, yes, of course. I haven't gone that far with in EA yet, but I do. That's worth remembering. I must print off a list.
They're very powerful. In fact, if you go back to, I did a whole thing on the world wars, and the planetary nodes were configured very heavily in both world wars.
Wow.
So yeah, they're very evolution, you know, indicative of evolution. So, you know, the wars were, you know, part of that.
Wow, I'll print off a list of those and look at those. But because we've also got half truths with this Sagittarius, there can be half truths, and it can be the silver-tongued devil, charmer, guru, teacher, natural law, and alienation as well. So, you know, because it's the religious and spiritual aspect as well, isn't it? It's
very much. I mean, with the moon in Sag, which is philosophy and beliefs, as you say, but also squaring. So the eclipse, because it's a full moon, is T squaring. That's when you have an opposition, both planets in opposition, each squaring another planet. So 90 degrees each of them to another planet, and of course Jupiter is on the apex of the T square.
Oh wow. So, okay.
Yeah, and of course it rules the eclipse, the lunar eclipse in Sag, because Jupiter is the ruler of Sag, and it also rules the south node. So it's looking towards the past, although this is right, it's getting us to examine our pasts and what our beliefs are founded on, and how they affect our lives now, and how they have affected. What we're really seeing now is all the effects, and like a huge wave there really coming out, and we're seeing a tidal wave coming towards us that actually has been built up over centuries even.
Yeah, I can feel that. I actually do feel that energy, and you know, it's you know, the idea of feeling safe, like, you know, looking after my own immune system and being aware of what I know, and you know, and my own ideas and beliefs around things as well, and the difficulty of, you know, looking out there and what's coming at us in different, you know, in the news or media, and not knowing who to trust and not knowing the right way to go forward. It feels very frustrating. You know, I've had a bit of that sort of feeling today of not, you know, just wanting to feel settled and not knowing what's, you know, what's coming.
Exactly, but we can't, it's all sort of up in the air. So, and it's up in the air for a reason, because we really need to reconnect. We need to examine our beliefs, as I said, and reconnect, because we've lost our connection to the bigger picture, really.
And I feel
before this happened, I mean, we were so focused on our daily lives and focused on what was happening in our lives, and sort of thought we knew where we were going and what we had planned, sort of, you know.
Yeah,
but we were on sort of stable ground. We thought, well, now this has sort of pulled the rug, you know, this COVID thing has pulled the rug from underneath our feet, which has destabilized us. And that's that mutable T-square that's showing here, that we feel destabilized. So now what? Well,
we'll look at that chart, and then also we'll look at that on solar fire. But there was the chart of the lunar eclipse and the moon. But that moon, you know, the standard sort of belief, you know, just not going too deep, but that moon, the moon in Sagittarius, basically saying, if in order to feel safe, you might find that you need to have a goal, a mission, or a philosophy that gives your life meaning. With the moon in Sagittarius.
Overall, not all of us individually, but overall, we've sort of lost that. I mean, not anyone here that we're talking today, we're searchers, all of us, or we wouldn't be speaking, and we wouldn't be listening, and we wouldn't be learning. So we are searchers. That's the Sagittarian, you know, that's the Sagittarian moon.
Yeah.
So searching for the truths and for meaning. And so,
and being optimistic, like we want to sort of get, you know, to sort of get back some optimism, because we've been drained from us, you know. It's like with this backwards and going forwards, the stop start.
But overall, we know that the help lies in meaning, because we wouldn't, as I say, we wouldn't be engaged in this. You and I wouldn't, and our listeners wouldn't. No one involved in this right now would be actually even watching, if they weren't engaged in the quest for meaning. So we're better off than most. Individually, we're all doing, although it might not seem like it, we're all doing pretty well. Because even if we've been pushed into our engaging for meaning, and most of us have, through some suffering, that always is part of it. I mean, trauma and healing is part of the South Node in Uranus. I mean, the South Node in Uranus very often brings up trauma. But the trauma that's come up in the psyche is there to cause a deeper meaning to formulate from it. Absolutely. So yeah, exactly. So that's what it's all about. It's forming meaning, but from suffering.
So it's actually what Chiron is doing there is nice as well on that full moon. Is Chiron is sextile the sun, and it's trine to the moon, and Chiron is also sextile Saturn. So that's our healing. And then the Lilith, the shadow work that we do, is sextile to Neptune, which is, you know, the beyond this realm, and and then also Lilith trine to Pluto. So there's some support there.
And that black moon, that dark moon, as I was going to say, that's still quite close to the 26, 27 degrees Taurus of the head of Medusa that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago with the
absolutely, yeah, I can see that there. And I think the later one in the year is conjunct that actually, not Lilith, but the you know, we have an eclipse happening around that also.
Yeah, exactly.
By the looks of it. In fact, I think it was we did look at the eclipses, because I'm learning so much, you know, I've got a lot to learn about eclipses, but I do know that the one on November the 19th is going to be 27 degrees of Taurus, which is on Medusa.
Yeah. So and you do find, actually, when you look at the black moon, it is so that's the true black moon, isn't it, or is it the mean one?
I think it might be, but we'll see on the solar fire. Should I go forward with the charts you wanted? Because we've got some exciting stuff here, guys. You're gonna, and that Michaela's going to show us. So this was you wanted to mention the lunar eclipse of November 2020.
Yeah, because they're a pair. Because eclipses come in pairs. Really, they're 6 months apart. But then they are, as you can see, they reverse their positions. So you've got the moon in Gemini and you've got the sun in.
Oh, wow. Okay. I never saw that before. I never noticed that. So you're teaching me as well as telling others about this, because that's something I didn't know.
I didn't even start learning about eclipses till 2012. That's when I really started to get into them, and how I got into them, I won't go to great detail, but it was about the Titanic. I saw this documentary about the Titanic, and I thought, God, that I wonder if that was on an eclipse, because it was such a disaster. And this was a beautiful documentary, actually. It was very, very good. And I checked it, and it sunk on a solar eclipse.
Wow.
Yeah, and that really got me into eclipses then, because I thought, wow, that's...
There are solar eclipses. So in our eclipses, when one would look at their own chart, I mean, you can't predict clear, we can only work with the knowledge from a chart. But for instance, this one is falling within 4 degrees of my sun. So it's conjunct my sun, opposition. The moon is just slightly opposing my sun. But I understand my own life and my feelings, and I do know I can link in with the symbols and understand what's going on for me.
Yes, exactly. And you were born near to an eclipse, weren't you? You were the day before, isn't it?
The day after. So there was one on the 20th of May 1966.
Right.
That was, and the day after, the 21st. So the 20th it was.
Yeah.
So it would have been
that is very close.
Yeah, it is close.
So you are very sensitive to that. And they are PowerPoints, they're PowerPoints, they floodlight, which, the lunar eclipse is like a floodlight, and the solar eclipse is like a concentrated focal point that is telling you that something's coming and that something is being born, but you might not, it's in the dark, so you don't know what it is yet.
And actually, so that would mean that my sun was conjunct, my sun is conjunct Algol as well then, really, with the 0 degrees and 26, I guess.
Yeah, and it's called the head of Medusa, and we were talking about that because this about trauma that I was just saying, which is amazing, because the south node is on the planetary node of Uranus, and it's about trauma. But the head of Medusa, the myth of that is very much to do with the trauma of innocence,
feminine, of being, of course, because she was, and I don't mind that, she was, I think she was looking after the temple, and Athena, I think was it Athena?
Yes.
So she cast, because unfortunately, the story goes in a lot of these myths, there's some terrible things that happen, and there was rape of Algol, and she was very much cast aside also by Athena. Athena was angry with her, so she got shunned, even though Algol had been traumatized, she was shunned by the feminine as well in the temple. So it's, I'm sure there's more to the story, but we can see this play out in society, where people are traumatized, and then in many ways they're shunned through their own trauma to not, we're not acknowledging each other's trauma. We've all been traumatized.
Yeah, but it's also collective. So the individual reflects the collective, and the collective reflects the individual, because the trauma that we feel or that we go through individually is reflected in the collective too. So it's a two-way thing, like Jung says, it's the collective unconscious is linked into the individual.
Yeah, we can see this now with the Epstein case. I mean, it's linked into the collective. Things like that are not separate, that it is, we know that it's linked into the collective, and it's, that we need to deal with these
another
things.
thing, looking back now, this chart of the eclipse is this, so this one, I mean, that one is interesting, just to say briefly. I mean, that was, you can see that as the Pluto square Eris there, I believe.
See?
Yeah.
All right, so Pluto here, if you can see my mouse, guys, there's 23, and it's square to Eris there. So that's a square.
Then Mars was coming up for the conjunction of Eris, which meant it was going into the square of Pluto. So
wow. Okay.
And then that was when we were having another wave, I think most places, and it was really, we were getting another bout of the COVID thing, and things were very, very unsteady then. It is like a war. It's like a war we're going through.
It is. Do you think so with this chart? So
war.
Is there anything else you can bring up on this chart? Because we know very importantly now that Mars it activates. It's like a, you know, I think I have heard somebody say in the astrology that it's like a can opener. It activates things as it moves over.
Yeah, it's like it's a trigger.
Yeah.
So there you are. It triggered then, and now of course it's square to its place. Then it's now at 20 degrees. If we look at the chart now, 6 months later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at 20 degrees now. So it's square to its place, and now it's closing in again on Pluto, but now it's the opposition, and it's the square to Eris. So it's still square to Eris, but now it's opposed to Pluto.
Okay, so it is going into a square with Eris. Oh, wow, okay, yeah. Well, we'll see that on
T-squaring Eris. So the war is still on, but there we're in a different, you know, we're a different phase of it.
Would you like to mention this chart? Because again, you've got the knowledge on this one.
Because that's Benjamin, I don't know.
How do you,
Netanyahu. He's the Prime Minister of Israel, and that's why it's very interesting about how individually charts are affected and or symbolize what's happening in the lives of individuals and the collective, because obviously
his lunar eclipse.
Yeah, well, what it is, the eclipse is right across. That's his ascendant is at 6 degrees 40 something Sag.
45, so, yeah.
So it means the eclipse is right on his ascendant, but also the nodal, the south node of the moon is conjunct his Chiron. You can see there. That's his Chiron at 7 degrees Sag. That's his Venus at 12 degrees Sag. Conjunct, and that's his ascendant also is at 5 degrees. I think it says here. Is it? Oh, no, that's not his ascendant. Anyway, his ascendant is actually 5 degrees. So in fact, he's got Chiron and Venus rising in his chart. So it's right bang on across
that Chiron. I've seen people with that symbol. Yeah, that symbolism is hard. The Chiron on the.
Well, what's been happening with him before this started, you know, with Gaza and everything, he was starting to have a trial for he was going to be convicted for some criminal activity, fraud, etc. And so that's been going on since really well more than 6 months. So that chart affected him too, the one we just looked at of the 6 months ago lunar eclipse. So yeah, that's right, his ascendant is actually at 23 degrees Libra.
Okay,
it's remembered. So in fact Pluto and Eris were absolutely squaring his ascendant. And of course, they're closing in again. So he's really felt the heat. And in the elections, he wasn't doing very well until, you know, so, you know, it does seem like it was a sort of diversion, rather a, you know, bad diversion to make so you would not lose your elections and get your popularity back. But that's politics, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so to take the heat off himself. So it's yeah, it's
you're saying he's Libra rising, is that what you're saying?
Libra rising, yeah, he's 23 degrees Libra, so Pluto is square. See, Pluto's gone retrograde now, so it's going actually back to square his ascendant, and it's going to meet with that square to Eris by the time of the next eclipse, I think. October or anything.
And I think, you know, for me also, I think the younger generations coming through are really important because, you know, the Pluto Leos, I mean, I'm not, you know, where we really need, you know, the shifting of the mentality of society, you know, as we evolve through the Pluto in the generational.
Yeah. Exactly.
That makes sense, which is
okay,
important.
sorry, I see it here. He's 27, his sun is 27 Libra. Okay, so that really means he's going to really get hit by it again. It nearly got to his sun this time, Pluto, the square of it, but next time it's going to hit his sun square on.
I mean, it's quite interesting. I've been out of the news for so long that I didn't even know, you know, I don't know who's who in politics myself. So it's interesting hearing what you...
I only know since I got really interested, really since the eclipses, because the eclipses really get you into mundane astrology. And they get you to look at the news then and see how it's reflecting everything. And It really is amazing.
But do you know what? It may be that I've got Pluto in the ninth house, so I think I do tend to, when my mind goes back to people like you, the next chart we're going to show. So my mind feels more, you know, like this chart. I'm really interested in like what Leonardo da Vinci and the people such like that's 14. What year was that? That was 1452.
1452 he was born. So it was the start of the Renaissance. So, I mean, he and Michelangelo and some, you know, Marcello Ficino, I mean, it was an amazing, glorious era that originated in Florence in Italy and sort of sprouted all this amazing art and literature. It was like a glow out of the Dark Ages, literally came out of the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, and this amazing glow of insight and creativity. So so his chart, I mean, he was born into that and he was a major figure into it. So that's the Vitruvian Man, which is what his famous sketch.
What's it called again? The
Vitruvian Man. Yeah, which looks like a cross, in fact. I mean, he was, if you look at his chart, he has this amazing cardinal grand cross. So he's got Neptune at 0 degrees Libra, which up the top, conjunctus midheaven, which is very strong. I mean, 0 degrees of any sign is extremely strong. I mean, like your sun.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's T squared by the nodes, which are Capricorn, North Node, South Node, Cancer, and then down at the bottom he's got Mercury, which is cardinal, which is in 9 degrees Aries. So it's a grand cross. That's a cardinal grand cross.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's very, very powerful. And as you can see, the rest of his chart is splashed all over the place. So it's very creative. And I mean, you know, if you
and that Jupiter with the moon as well in expression.
Yeah, and there we are. So someone put it up the other day, and then I noticed Jupiter, he's having his Jupiter return. And obviously his Jupiter moon. So he has a Jupiter moon conjunction, and Jupiter's there right now.
Yeah.
At his Jupiter position. And of course, he has the ascendant at 638 Sag. So again, the eclipse is right across his chart.
Wow.
So it's really highlighting his chart. So when you see that, even when it's someone who might be long, you know, long ago, it's often their work will come into view again, a book will come out, something that mentions them, that it's like the focus is back on them.
Oh, wow. Okay. Like, I guess with people like Jung and stuff like that as well,
Yeah,
that would be interesting
exactly.
to look at.
Exactly.
Can I move to the next slide?
So this is the Last Supper. This was his famous.
There you go. Can you see that?
Yeah. So, yeah.
So the Last Supper was his.
Yeah, so this was his famous painting of the Last Supper, obviously with Christ and the disciples, but he had hidden messages in that, and it has been deciphered from a few people now that he actually was depicting the disciples as the zodiac signs. And wow. Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing was, he was a Rosicrucian. He was born. He entered into the Rosy Cross, it was called in his time, and it was it later became the Rosicrucians.
Is that religious, or is that religious sect?
Branch of the Freemasons.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was a Freemason, but there are different branches of the Freemasons, and you know, there's the Kabbalists as well. They're all related to Gnosticism, but there's different orders of them, and the Rosicrucians were related to the Knights Templar.
Yeah,
yeah.
When I've seen this as well, I always thought the sun. I mean, the Son of God, is that not part Leo as well, or you know, the self, or?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, in the myths the Gnostics acknowledged that the myths were related to the constellations and signs of the zodiac and to the whole planetary makeup. And it went back to ancient Egypt, but actually way back before ancient Egypt. So, and then all that knowledge was amazingly, the Knights Templar actually, paradoxically, they went to the Crusades, but they ended up they ended up getting knowledge of all of this about ancient Egypt and everything, which is why it was brought back to the West and actually preserved that way for the West, which we would have lost all of that in astrology and everything else. We might not have even been introduced to it if it wasn't for that. So everything has its good side. And also the Rosicrucians were founded because it was said that the pilgrims going to the Holy Lands needed protection.
What's the Rosicrucians?
Rosicrucians, they're a branch of the Freemasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is this word here?
Okay, so that's a fucus.
I get you.
A fucus. A fucus. Okay, a fucus is the 13th sign of the zodiac.
Okay, I didn't know.
So, but there are different theories as to why it was sort of cut out of the zodiac and the 12 were left in. But I mean, it partly is said maybe it's because it's seen as a very special part of the zodiac. In fact, it's like it's hidden in plain sight, and that's like everything with the Gnostics. I mean, okay, so he was a Gnostic. He was a Rosicrucian, Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, the Renaissance was built on that. That's why they really had the Renaissance, because they were all alchemists.
And what is a Gnostic?
A Gnostic is a Gnostic Christian. So the Gnostic Christians actually go back to ancient Egypt and way beyond, some say to Atlantis. And so the ancient knowledge was preserved, and they say Jesus was a Gnostic, and that's come out in the Nag Hammadi texts since, in 1947, in fact, on another Saturn-Pluto conjunction, they were discovered. So, so the Christian, it's a long story, and I won't go into it now. I will actually do something on it.
Well, maybe we'll do something on it. What I thought was, if I go down to the emanated chart, and we've got here.
Could I just say about that though, because it's quite interesting about.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yes. Do you want me to go back to the?
Yeah, I was just going to say about a fucus.
Oh, I say sorry. Okay, there.
So I won't go into all of that because it's a very long history, but that's why he's put the zodiac signs there, because actually history was sort of changed. There is mythology in the story of the Christian story that was injected from various other myths. But as I say, I won't go into that now, but that's why he's put that. And there is hidden meaning there. In fact, you can see these are based on the constellations, the signs are based on the constellations, and their hand movements, their hand positions are based on the constellations as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And as you can see, the equinoxes and the solstices, and this band, which is the table, represents the ecliptic belt.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because everything was code. Yes. So behind in the windows, you can see I would say that's symbolizing the Milky Way.
Yeah.
So because a fucus is actually in the middle of the Milky Way, and there you have the figure of Christ, which is in the shape of a fucus. He's like in a V shape.
Yeah, and the Milky Way, actually, if we look at the sky, and I've seen some beautiful pictures of it recently. A friend of mine has been out in the desert, and a guy on Facebook taking shots of the Milky Way, and we can see that sort of does sort of resemble the Milky Way in the background.
Yeah. Well, the wonderful thing is it ties us in. It's like the myths and the constellations and all the stories around them all tie into our lives constantly. So it's a constantly moving, but it's constantly part of the stories of our lives, which is why it's such a shame. We've been divorced from it. We've been disconnected. Yeah. And so these secret societies, including the Kabbalah with the tree of life and the chakra system and the tarot and all that stuff, they connect us. So, and astrology is obviously a huge part of that. So it all reconnects us to this ancient, which is what the eclipse is about. It's reconnection to what we've lost, and what beliefs we might have lost that we need to resurrect.
And I see that in the first part, in Genesis on the first page of the Bible, depending on what Bible you've got, I guess, it mentions the stars that, that basically they've been given to bring the light, to show us the way. So it's not, you can see that even there, that in the Bible.
Also, you can see, look, you've got the dark side, one side, and that's why the winter solstice, which is the dark point, which is 0 degrees Capricorn. So you've got the dark, and you've got the signs of winter, Capricorn, Sag, and Aquarius. And so then it goes a bit lighter, and then it goes to the spring equinox. So it's rising. That's the lowest point. That's meant to be hell. That's the lowest dark point, is 0 degrees Capricorn. So then it starts to get darker as the sun goes towards the spring. It gets lighter. Then you have the dawn. You have the spring equinox. Those three planets, all in groups.
Fascinating. Can I go over to solar fire?
Yes, yeah. I just wanted to say one thing about a fucus, which I just sorry, I rambled a bit. Okay, so it says a fucus is a gateway between one realm and the next, adding another dimension, and it has a special connection. It says, note the scriptures of the New. This is, by the way, I'm reading from Myth and Trauma, which is David Warner Matheson, which is
brilliant.
But I know about all this stuff. And he says about in the New Testament, Jesus says, "I am the door." And so a fucus is the connections the ancient myths present us with powerful illustrations relating to the path of reconciliation with our essential self. And the way of recovery involves detachment, opening up a gap within which we can disconnect from the automatic programmatic response of the superficial self, within which we may observe from a distance how the egoic mind wants to react, so that we can choose to give the reins to our essential self instead. He talks a lot about myth and trauma there, and a fucus is very important in that. And it's through in myths all over the world, ancient myths. So it says a gateway or portal to wisdom. And it's very helpful, actually, in learning all of this is so helpful in reconnecting with that lost self that we've for so long we sort of lost that. Thank God for astrology, though, that it's kept us connected. It's one of the few things that has.
Absolutely. So it's fascinating. The more I'm just looking at it, it's interesting what you begin to see when you really look at things.
Yeah.
So can I go over to solar fire?
Yep.
Okay, so what we got here, this is really good. It made me think for a bit there. Definitely, I will look at that deeper now. I really looked at it, because we can just look at things and look at the surface, and when we start looking deeper, we see more. So this is just the chart of now, basically. But if we go days ahead, can you see my screen share on this?
Yes, yeah, fine.
We got, this is the 25th and this is the 26th. So let's look for the hour that we should be. If we go to, we got the moon is up here at 10, it's 11. So we want to go back by hours to get it to 5. And there we go, 5:21. And I think it's 5:25, isn't it? So we're going by minutes. It always takes so long. Oh, there we go. 1, 2. There you go. So looking at it from this aspect now, and that this is Aries rising. I haven't brought up the chart. This is like 0 degrees Aries. But what you can see here, so with my own chart, what would I be looking for if I'm looking at an eclipse, which is really fascinating to me as I'm learning through you as well. When I look at my own chart, would I just be taking into account the aspects to the sun and the moon, or would I, clearly it's the whole chart. It's not just.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the whole chart. And obviously the aspects of the time, the transits of the time of the eclipse. So it's like a screenshot of what's happening in your chart. So yeah, and it's in your 3rd house, isn't it? So it's right across your 3rd and your 9th.
Which would be, you mean the eclipse?
Yeah.
This one is in 2nd. My 2nd house is just 5 degrees.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. This is an Aries, rising. Yeah, okay.
If I was looking at porphyry and the chart.
Well, I mean, Gemini is to do with this is an Aries, it's the natural zodiac chart, but Gemini is to do with the 3rd house anyway. So you always, if you've got the sun in Gemini, you've always got a 3rd house sort of take on everything. It's about communication. It's
Yeah,
about,
if it was a solar, I get you now. If it
but
was
the sun is in Gemini,
yeah,
so it's conjunct your sun too, isn't it? So
yeah, it is. It is.
yeah.
And
So it is picking up Gemini. It's about communication, and it's about higher learning, and it's about beliefs, and what we were just talking about. It very much picks up your chart. And then you've got Jupiter, and in your natal chart, where's the Jupiter? It's in
Jupiter, I think it's just in 8. It's just tipped into 8, literally by it's on 7, tipping into 8. I should know it off by
but I
heart.
mean, yeah, in the transits, the transiting Jupiter here.
Oh, the transiting, it's at the bottom of it's at the bottom of the chart, literally moving into, it's because my IC is 20 degrees. My IC is 20 degrees Pisces.
Yeah, so it's in your third.
Yeah.
So there you go again. That's sort of reiterated that third house, ninth house connection. Jupiter's in your third. Pisces, again, about beliefs.
Well, that's really interesting, because that's what I'm doing at the moment. If you think
Yeah.
about it, I'm seeking justice for some past stuff that's happened in my life that goes many years back, which is fascinating. I'm dealing with authorities, and it's communicating, and it is digging back, 40 odd years plus.
Yes, exactly. And it's about perspective as well. So as you go on, your perspective changes about the past too. And you've got to deal with your perspective on it as well. You've got to deal with what comes up, haven't you?
Exactly. And my perspective then, where I'm helping women in my meetup group, or we help each other, and clearly that information is not just helping me, then reaching out to other people, as I am able to objectify my past in a way without the emotional content. But however, the emotional content does come in when we're in our alone time sometimes, or we get triggers from our traumas, or we get memories, or we're having to deal with things that feel a bit unpleasant for us.
Yes, exactly. But we're learning new ways now. There's so much that we're actually that we don't know, and that we are going to learn from all of this, and ways that we haven't conceived of. So our belief systems are changing. Our beliefs and our perspectives are changing all the time, and really rapidly now. So
rapidly, completely, because as new information comes through, and it's looked at how what the possible cure, or what would be the antidote to the problem that we're having with a virus, and the antidote, and then all of the ideas that are coming through on whether it's good for only a section of people, or whether it's for the totality, or there's so many things that we just don't know yet.
And we're learning to use our intuition as well, because we have, when our minds get confused and we get to a point where we're saturated with all this information, as we've said before, and all these, the transiting nodes through Sag Gemini sort of point that out. They have
the North Node in Gemini.
Then we really need to get to a point where we need to trust our intuition, because that's what it all, but when you've got all your information that you can get, it really boils down to then what does your gut tell you? What do you pick up from the universal mind, from the universal consciousness, which actually informs us? If we make that connection to the universal consciousness, which is what Leonardo da Vinci was trying to say to people, then we get all the information we need. So we don't need to sift through it anymore, because it's as though we get that truth, and we know it when we get it.
And interesting, that sun
Pisces is telling us, that's informing us of
and in 5 days, so for 4.5 days, that sun is going to be moving into, it's going to touch in with the North Node.
Yeah, exactly. So we are sort of being I don't like the word forced, but we're being sort of prodded back into using our intuitive minds and our connection. We are being prodded back into using reconnecting with the universe, with the universal consciousness, in order to advance our consciousness. So it's a two-way thing happening all the time. And as we go with that flow, we'll get that stronger and stronger. So all this feeling of confusion and pressure will relieve, because we'll know that we're just trust
Yeah, and exactly, we can't, you know, it's going to change. Things don't stay the same. So we did have the Saturn go retrograde. It went retrograde at May 22nd at 13 degrees, and it will be going backwards. Sorry, is it the 24th? RX back to 6 degrees.
I think it's already
stationed.
It's already stationed. I think it's already going back, isn't it?
Yeah, it is here. So the 13, and it's going back to 6 degrees, and it will go direct again on October the 11th. Yeah. And it will go direct.
So it's reapplying to that square with Uranus. So
yes, if we go,
feel that pressure, and actually, it's an interesting thing. I just looked at the Sabian symbol for Saturn at 13, because it's at 13 and it's going back to 13, and it's stationed really because it's in the middle of 13 and 14. So it's the Sabian symbol for that is a barometer, which is really interesting because it talks about pressure. In fact, it says you are feeling a change approaching, sensing change, or the need for one because you have been stuck in the same conditions for too long. Health-wise, a need for some simple test or for keeping a record of your state of health and daily activities, looking for possible correlations. Keep focusing on reading the signs correctly. So if there is too much or too little pressure or the wrong kind of pressure, is it increasing or decreasing, indicating a change is going to occur naturally or inevitably? Or should you change before your back is against the wall? Consult your feelings. So again, consult your feelings regarding the issue.
And this is the thing, we can't deny our feelings. Yeah. Everybody, you know, people with the idea that somebody, you know, I get quite offended when people are thinking that, you know, that people are using the word anti-vax. I mean, I'm coming from the idea in my human design, I've got something called an open spleen, which means that I'm very hypervigilant to you know, the health things and what I put into my body. So in my hypervigilance, I feel very on guard, which can be very nerve-wracking, you know, with that Gemini highly strung, I think, as well, with the sun. And you know, we've each got to make our own choice because we're each on our soul journey, and we don't know at this point. In time to come, we will know, you know, what may be a correct, you know, our guidance, our inner guidance, and the collective guidance of what is right for humanity at this time.
Yeah, well, as it says here, it says keep focused on those powers of observation and judgment you have that are intuitive, physical, and automatic, and should therefore be trusted, despite more logical or analytical methods of assessment.
Yeah.
So what you feel the oracle is telling you, you may have to tap it, that is, read between the lines or make your own personal interpretation.
Yeah, and I think people need to be, you know, not be shamed about their choices in what they decide to do for themselves. It's like if somebody's or thinking, I'm not sure, that we...
Like a lot of pushing going on, and a lot of saying, you should do this, should do that, shouldn't do that.
Somebody said to me once, should is a whip, because the thing, you know, should is like whipping yourself because you can't, you know, I should have ended the relationship then, I should have...
There is no should. It's really a delusional thing. It's an illusion. Should is an illusion because it's irrelevant what actually, you know, happened, and we have to deal with that. It's no good saying should. In fact, it's such a delusion because you could say I should have done this because that would have happened. Well, how do we know that would have happened? That thing we think would have happened? Because we don't know what would happen.
We don't know. And that Mercury is just about to go, that Mercury... Yeah, that Mercury is then, if we go days ahead to the 27th, 28th, 29th, we've then got Mercury, and the sun will be going towards the moon. That's exciting. And then the moon is going to hit Pluto, and then and then we're going to have Pluto opposition Mars, Mars opposition Pluto.
Yes.
We're going for the big one here. Where's that Mercury? Mercury is 24. It stations there. We can see a station. Can you see that?
Yep.
Station.
Retrograde. Yeah.
And then Venus is on top of that as it stations. And then we go the 30th of May, 31st.
And that's quincunx to Pluto, of course. Yeah.
Which one is the
Mercury and Venus, quincunx to Pluto, 26.
Okay. And then we've got this conjunction here, the moon and the node.
Yeah. So all this confidence of where we're going, suddenly, oh, you know, all this has worked with the vaccine, and you can take all our masks off and party. We may be a bit premature with
that. But I think with that
So
Saturn
a little
retrograde,
caution is sort of, called for. And what's wrong with caution? I mean, you know, why are we so impatient? But as you were saying with the Pluto transits, it's like Mars, Pluto. We're very impatient now to just make reality what we want it to be. But we're going to learn the hard ways that you can't do that. You can't make reality what you want it
I'm
to
just
be.
watching the hours here with that moon. As that moon moves over on the 30th, it will move over, and moon will conjunct Pluto on the 31st. And that's again in that same, as you said there, with the I always get sesquare. I wish there was another word for that, sesqui-square or whatever. With the
I know, it's a square root. It's a square root, yeah.
And then we've got, that's the 31st of May, and then that Mars and Pluto, it's moving on in. I mean, it's already in a conjunction, isn't it? There with the Mars is already in an opposition to Pluto at that
point. Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. So it is moving in. So, you know, we're being a bit premature. We should at least, you know, keep distancing and masking. Why are we so in a hurry to take them off? And why is there such a stigma against that? It's weird, you know, when they're a precaution. What's wrong with being a little bit cautious? There you go.
And then actually the moon will cross Chiron, and then we've got that square going on up here. So this is really another interesting year ahead. But I think we need to all look after, all of us, you know, our mental health.
All but all these upheavals are in the aid of transformation, because we need transformation. We do. You know, we need to reconnect, and we need transformation because we have been going in the wrong direction for some time.
And I feel that the way I'm feeling personally at the moment, I mean, it may be just passing with the coming days of what's going on, but the way I'm feeling is that I actually want to, because you know, people are going on about variants and about terrible things happening to people. I'm feeling I really want to, where I have been isolating, now I really feel like I really do want to stay away from people. So God knows where
it's not an unwise thing to do right now. So, you know, until we know what's happening, because we don't really have any clear sense of what exactly is happening with all of this. So why not take a step back? And as I say, use some caution, but they're not doing, you know, unfortunately.
Well, I think some people are and some people aren't.
Ahead,
and we don't know.
The others who don't want to push ahead, they should let them be cautious if they want.
And statistics are very confusing because, you know, I mean, I can't go into it on YouTube because, you know, the channel is really important part of what I'm doing. So, you know, that again, we can only say so much and stay safe in our creativity and and the platforms we're using. You know, we can't. When we've been shut down from our opinion, there are a few people that
it's good in astrology not to get political anyway. I mean, you know, because
it's not political, but just our feeling.
No, I know, but I mean, it's not about our opinions, which we do have to try and keep a little on prejudice. But at the same point, we're saying, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are prejudiced, and we can see that in the charts that their beliefs and their desires are being forced on other people.
And I think that really the Pluto in Capricorn and the last leg and the patriarchal rule is, to me, what that's telling me is that, you know, there's been that, you know, the losses will continue to be there, as we can see that the government and powers that be really don't have that much. They don't know any more than we do.
No, but they do they have the reins, and they're not going to give that up easily. And that's really what all this is about, because there is a tussle now going on, as you said, between the powers that be, the patriarchal.
No, people are having to set up their own platforms. I've been following people for years on YouTube, and, you know, like a guy, Richard Grannon today, who's talked for years on complex PTSD, and he's now having to, if you've got your own website, then you can put your own videos up there, and then you're bypassing, you know, the YouTubers. And I think there's another guy called Brian Rose who's done the same. And there's a lot of people doing this now.
Well, so that they're not. There's a lot of censorship going on, and actually that's a dangerous thing when you get into that area of censorship.
Yes. So, but the good thing is that, you know, that people have the ability to have their own platforms where they can say what they need to said.
Still do that, yeah, and let people sift out their own, their own feelings about it.
Yeah, but to reach the masses, we do need, like a platform like YouTube or whatever is a brilliant tool. But again, one is having to sort of be reined in. But that would also be the Saturn square that's happening here.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's all part of us learning to get along together and communicate, because that's what we haven't really learned to do. We haven't learned to communicate honestly with each other. We've disconnected as
the transparency. But as I said, I think earlier, the problem we've got with that, and I know myself when I was healing in my own trauma, and when I, for instance, I would use alcohol, to disassociate, and still I was running a business and I was able to maintain all of that. But where there's so many different layers and levels of consciousness that, this is where the Aquarius and the split, because certain people are going to go off one way and one route, and
very polarized. But that's part of it. That's part of what sort of has to happen, because everything is getting sifted out, and in order to do that, we get to extremes of the other end of the
it's like, who are my people and who can I?
Exactly, but it is all part of the process.
Yes.
And astrologically that shows that this is a process we're going through, and it's not just an end goal. It's a whole process that's got to be,
it's an evolution.
It's part of the age of Aquarius. It's going into, it's the death of the old age we're feeling now, and the birth of a new one. And so we're getting death pangs and we're getting birth pains, all at the same time. We picked a good time to be born, didn't we?
24 hours.
You lot out there and us.
So for you guys out there,
we're up for it, right?
For you guys out there, it will show up in your own chart how this is out, and to know, I think it's really important for people to know they're not alone in this, and
that's the thing. We're all feeling it in our different ways, but it is if we can know that it's part of the process, and that it is, that's what has to be gone through, and the more we can elevate our consciousness and our understanding, then the more we can help the process.
Exactly. And that's a good note to leave it on today. Is that good with you?
Great.
We've covered some great ground there. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to be back. The next one will be on the 10th. So we've got another eclipse to do, but it's a solar. Yeah.
Yes. So another one. Yes.
So that's exciting. And that will be in, that's going to be, the solar is going to be in Gemini. Oh, that's great. It's going to fall on my moon. I mean, it just gets more exciting.
Opposite my Saturn.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
and Sun conjunct. So it's conjunct my Saturn.
Well, maybe we could.
Hold on. I forgot what my Saturn is now. I don't want it. Okay. My Saturn's in Sagittarius, so
Well, what we could do is maybe that time we could bring up
it's a solar chart. It's a solar eclipse. That's why. Yeah.
What we could do is I could bring up my chart and your chart, so we can maybe engage people a bit more in how they could then analyze their own chart, looking at something like that. That would be a good education.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah? Exactly.
All right, well, leave it there for today, and thanks you guys for listening. Catch you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.